Gotta go.
Hey, guy, you're the first serious gamer I've seen all morning. Check this out. Brand new 16-bit Super Nintendo with Super Mario World. Wow!
What's this one?
Oh, this is a Sonic the Hedgehog from Sega Genesis.
By 1993, the 16-bit console wars were in full swing. Sega had come out swinging at Nintendo, and its Sonic the Hedgehog ads had effectively turned Mario and company into a laughingstock. American developers looking to get into the console market skipped right over Super NES and leapt directly to Genesis. Sega was doing so well in the US that Japanese companies began to take notice. Longtime Nintendo series like Castlevania and Mega Man began to trickle their way to Genesis. Nintendo fought back the only way it knew how, with sheer, unrelenting quality. 1993 would be a great year for Super NES, a non-stop cavalcade of incredible video games. The winners in the console wars were therefore gamers, who were guaranteed a mountain of excellent software no matter which hardware they sided with. Star Fox. The spiritual successor to a little-known Game Boy shooter called X, Star Fox represented Nintendo's first major collaboration with a Western developer. British studio Argonaut, buoyed by the programming talents of future video game superstar Dylan Cuthbert, helped Nintendo craft the impressive Star Fox. Argonaut's biggest contribution? A special add-on microchip called the Super FX, which boosted the console's pokey processor to the point that it could suddenly churn out polygonal 3D graphics. While it looks helplessly simplistic and runs like molasses by today's standards, Star Fox once again gave Nintendo the technological edge over the competition, at least until Sega's 32X debuted a year and a half later. Lost Vikings. Developed by the future Blizzard Entertainment, The Lost Vikings hews a little closer to what the company would become known for. Set in a comical Norse realm where three Vikings had to journey through dozens of complex stages, The Lost Vikings remains incredibly playable thanks to its clever, puzzle-centric design. Though it resembled a platform action game, in fact it was a pretty slow-paced journey in which players could alternate their focus between any of the three protagonists, taking turns to open doors and press switches that would allow the trio to make its way home together. Bubsy and Claws Encounters of the Third Kind. Just kidding, Bubsy was awful. Shadowrun. Shadowrun, on the other hand, was excellent. Building off the popular tabletop game, Beam put together arguably the first great Western RPG for Super NES, a sort of spiritual sequel to the obscure NES adventure game Nightshade. Featuring a world to be roamed freely, ample dialogue choices, and a legitimate cyberpunk style that would make William Gibson proud, and his lawyers rich, Shadowrun offered an interesting and impressive alternative to the high fantasy Japanese RPGs that populated the system. Super Bomberman. Hudson's long-running Bomberman series finally made its Super NES debut in 1993. As was often the case with Bomberman, the so-called meat of the game was meant to be the extensive single-player mode, but actually everyone really wanted it for the multiplayer element, which could be played by 4 people in tandem with the help of the packed-in multi-tap dongle, which helped introduce Nintendo fans to the pleasure of 4-player mayhem long before Nintendo 64 was a thing. Alien 3. Games based on movie licenses rarely turn out well, but Alien 3 was an exception. It managed to capture the best part of the troubled film, the brooding, ominous atmosphere, and sent players into the tunnels and hallways of Fiorina 161's prison complex as Ellen Ripley. heavily armed and fully shorn of her lustrous locks. Granted, the game gets a little bit repetitive toward the end, but the excellent graphics, somber audio effects, and non-linear mission-based play really helped this shooter stand out. Run Saber. One of Sega Genesis's first major third-party coups was a wonderfully faithful adaptation of Capcom's arcade hit Strider. All Nintendo fans got was a wobbly Metroidvania pretending to be Strider. But at least Atlas came through with this excellent Strider ripoff. Run Saber nicely captured the style and feel of Capcom's game, and even one-upped it in a way by introducing two-person simultaneous play. Run Saber may have lacked its inspiration's cinematic excess, but it still made for good times. Troop. This surprisingly solid creation offered two-player simultaneous action in a Zelda-style top-down perspective. While not a true action RPG like Zelda, it definitely went heavy on the puzzles, making for a game quite unlike any other. Super Mario AllStars. Once upon a time, the concept of remasters and HD reissues didn't exist. Games came, then they went. With Super Mario AllStars, though, Nintendo decided that some of its greatest creations of all time deserved better than to fade quiet into that good night. So they brought together 4 8-bit Mario games in a single package. This was no straight compilation, though. With Mario AllStars, all 4 games received a comprehensive makeover, benefiting from new graphics, save support, and even tweaked physics. It also represented the first time that Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2 had come to the West. It was one heck of a package, and a must-own for serious Nintendo fans. E.V.O. The Search for Eden. People recall the Super NES as the home of great RPGs, and games like E.V.O. serve as a reminder of why. Abandoning the usual sword and sorcery aspect of the genre, and in fact almost all semblance of a plot, E.V.O. centered around evolution. Players began as a tiny critter in the oceans, roaming around to chomp on other life forms in order to gain strength and customized evolutionary forms. It's crazy expensive these days, but that's the price you pay to play something so unique and wonderful. Zombies Ate My Neighbors. At first glance, you might almost kind of mistake this for Goof Troop, since it too is a cooperative top-down action game. But no, Zombies Ate My Neighbors is its own creature, featuring more of a free-roaming action feel and tons of shooting. At times it almost felt like a lost sequel to Smash TV, all the way down to the giant-sized enemies and oddball sense of humor. Definitely worth playing, even if it's not your typical LucasArts fare. And finally, Secret of Mana. A spectacular way to end the year, Square's Secret of Mana offered a sort of midpoint between Final Fantasy and The Legend of Zelda. A true top-down action RPG, Mana took the RPG part seriously, integrating all the trappings you'd expect. A dense story, a complex real-time combat system revolving around 8 different weapons that needed to be upgraded and mastered, 2 different schools of magic, and best of all, 3-player simultaneous gameplay. A sprawling adventure through a post-apocalyptic Earth featuring great music and memorable characters, Secret of Mana remains a 16-bit classic for the ages. For more looks at great games, both old and new, be sure to subscribe to usgamer.net. USGamerNet on YouTube.